Ethan had never imagined that a normal morning in Terra Prime could turn into something extraordinary. He walked through the crowded streets of the space hub, carrying his satchel filled with datapads and books. Humans and aliens moved side by side, exchanging goods, greetings, and stories. The smell of exotic spices mixed with the faint scent of ozone from the starships docking nearby. Despite the chaos, Ethan felt calm. He enjoyed observing the differences between humans and other species, learning their customs, and recording their languages. It was his job, and he loved it. That calm shattered when a small, glowing message appeared on his personal communicator. It was unlike any standard message. The holographic text shimmered with a subtle pulse. The words were simple but commanding. "You are summoned by the Empress of the Aelari. Immediate travel to the royal capital is required." Ethan blinked, uncertain whether it was a prank or a serious command. The Aelari were one of the most powerful and mysterious alien empires in the known galaxy. Humans rarely interacted directly with their royal court, and even fewer were summoned personally. A mix of fear and excitement coursed through him. By the time he reached the spaceport, a small, sleek ship awaited him. Its metallic surface reflected the twin suns above, and the emblem of the Aelari Empire glimmered on its side. A silent Aelari attendant gestured for him to board. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but curiosity pushed him forward. The ship lifted off smoothly, and Terra Prime shrank below him, replaced by the endless darkness of space sprinkled with stars. He tried to calm his racing thoughts. Why me? Why would the Empress summon a human? The journey lasted hours, during which Ethan studied the ship's interior. Everything was unfamiliar but strangely elegant. The walls shimmered softly, and the air smelled faintly of something floral, yet metallic. The attendant spoke in the Aelari tongue, but one eventually handed him a small translator device. He nodded in thanks and let himself relax a little. Soon, the ship descended toward the capital planet. From above, the palace looked like a jewel embedded in a mountain, glowing with soft lights that shifted like liquid. Ethan felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. When he stepped onto the palace grounds, he was immediately struck by the scale and beauty of the place. Towering crystal spires reached toward the sky, and gardens of strange, luminous plants stretched for miles. Every detail seemed designed to impress and overwhelm. Yet Ethan noticed a certain harmony, a balance that suggested thoughtfulness rather than mere grandeur. He was led into the throne hall, a vast space with high ceilings, where the Empress awaited. She sat upon a throne that seemed to float slightly above the ground, surrounded by subtle beams of light. Her appearance was regal and intimidating. Her skin had a faint metallic sheen, and her eyes were a deep, reflective silver that seemed to look right through him. "You are Ethan," she said, her voice calm but powerful. It carried a weight that demanded attention. "We have observed your work with interest. Humans are known for adaptability, but rarely do they display such insight into alien cultures." Ethan swallowed, realizing he could not simply nod politely here. "Yes, Your Majesty," he replied, bowing slightly. "I am honored to be here." The Empress studied him in silence for a long moment, as if weighing his soul. Behind her, a young Aelari woman stepped out from the shadows. Ethan immediately recognized her as the princess from the careful grace in her movements. Her eyes were bright and curious, and she watched him carefully, though she stayed mostly hidden behind the protocol. Ethan could not shake the feeling that her gaze held more than mere curiosity. It was warm, almost questioning. "You understand the customs of your people," the Empress continued. "Yet you also respect ours. Tell me, what is the value of understanding another civilization?" Ethan paused, thinking. He had studied this many times, but in front of the Empress, the words felt heavier. "Understanding allows peace and cooperation," he said finally. "It allows different beings to trust each other, to work together. Knowledge without respect is meaningless." The Empress inclined her head slightly, a subtle sign of approval. "And yet, humans are known for their independence. You are curious, brave, and sometimes reckless. How do we know you will not disrupt our order?" Ethan smiled faintly, realizing she was testing him. "I cannot speak for all humans," he said honestly, "but I can promise that I act with integrity and caution, and I listen carefully to those I wish to work with." For the first time, the Empress's expression softened just slightly. The princess stepped closer, and Ethan felt a brief moment of connection. Liara's eyes held a quiet intensity. There was no question about etiquette or protocol in that gaze, only something personal, something that reached beyond words. Ethan felt a strange warmth, a feeling he had never experienced with anyone from another species before. He reminded himself to stay professional. The Empress then made her decision. "You will remain on this planet as a guest scholar. You will continue your observations, assist our council in understanding human culture, and provide insight when requested. Your presence will be closely monitored." Ethan felt a mix of relief and surprise. Staying meant opportunity, but it also meant being constantly watched. He accepted without hesitation. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will do my best." Liara lingered near the edge of the hall as he was escorted to his quarters. When their eyes met again, she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Ethan wondered what she was thinking, and for a moment, he felt that maybe the summoning was not just a political gesture. Maybe there was more to his presence here than mere observation. Over the next few days, Ethan adjusted to life within the palace. He studied Aelari history, language, and customs with enthusiasm. Liara often joined him, sometimes under the pretense of lessons, other times simply to share stories. She laughed at his human jokes, and Ethan marveled at how intelligent and kind she was. They exchanged tales of home worlds, of humanity's struggles and achievements, and of the Aelari Empire's rich history. Ethan realized that Liara's curiosity was genuine, and her questions often revealed a sharp mind behind her gentle exterior. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Ethan noticed the twin moons casting silver light across the glowing flowers. Liara paused by a fountain, watching the reflection of stars in the water. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if people from different worlds can truly understand each other?" Ethan looked at her, meeting her gaze. "I think understanding is possible," he said. "It takes patience, honesty, and sometimes courage to bridge the gaps. But yes, it is possible." She smiled, and for a moment, the distance between their worlds seemed to disappear. Ethan felt a connection, unlike any he had experienced before. He realized that this bond, fragile yet powerful, was something neither of them could ignore. Yet, he also knew the stakes were high. Her mother, the Empress, was powerful and watchful. The court was full of tradition and expectation. Any misstep could have consequences far beyond their personal feelings. Still, for the first time in his life, Ethan felt that he was exactly where he needed to be. The summoning, the palace, the Empress, and even Liara's subtle smiles, they were all part of a story that was only beginning. And he, a human among aliens, was no longer just an observer. He was a participant in something far greater than he had ever imagined. That night, as he lay in his quarters overlooking the City of Light, Ethan wondered what the Empress truly wanted from him. Was it purely diplomatic? Or was there a deeper purpose? And why did he feel, with a certainty that surprised him, that Liara's heart had already chosen him, even if the world around them had not yet noticed? The palace was quiet, yet the air seemed charged with possibilities. Ethan knew that his journey had just begun, and whatever lay ahead, it would test not just his mind and courage, but the strength of the human spirit itself. Days passed in the Aelari Palace, with a rhythm both strange and mesmerizing to Ethan. Each morning brought new lessons in culture, history, and diplomacy. And each evening brought quiet conversations with Liara among the glowing gardens. He began to understand that the palace was not only a seat of power but also a place where subtle gestures carried immense meaning. Every smile, glance, and tone of voice could shift alliances, reveal secrets, or hide intentions. And Ethan, for all his human curiosity, was learning to read it all. Liara's presence became a constant. She would appear at his study sessions, sometimes under the guise of learning human art and literature, other times simply to share stories about her life and experiences. Ethan found himself drawn to her intelligence and kindness. Unlike many nobles he had read about, she did not act out of pride or arrogance. She listened carefully, questioned thoughtfully, and laughed freely when something amused her. And yet, beneath her gentle demeanor, Ethan sensed a quiet strength. She was accustomed to living under the shadow of her mother's authority, but she carried herself with dignity and subtle defiance. One afternoon, they walked through a corridor lined with translucent panels showing images of Aelari history. A battle from centuries ago played out in shifting light. Liara paused, her hand resting lightly on the glass. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "why humans are willing to risk so much for others? Even strangers?" Ethan considered her question. Humans, he thought, often acted from hope, courage, and sometimes stubbornness. "I think humans value connection," he said carefully. "Even strangers can become important if you treat them with respect. That trust can change outcomes, sometimes more than weapons or power." Liara looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting both curiosity and a soft glow from the panels. "It seems your species has a way of making even small gestures matter," she said. "Here, we often measure worth by power, lineage, or achievement. Humans, you measure worth differently." Ethan smiled faintly. "I suppose we do. We find value in choices, in empathy, in loyalty. Those things can matter more than titles." As they continued through the palace, Ethan began noticing subtle changes in Liara's behavior. She would linger a moment longer in conversation, offer gentle encouragement, and occasionally let her guard drop entirely. It was small, almost imperceptible. But Ethan's human instincts sensed it. He realized that her interest in him went beyond friendship or curiosity, and yet he could not allow himself to assume too much. The Empress was watching, and the rules of the court were complex. Misreading a signal could be dangerous. Meanwhile, the Empress observed Ethan in secret. From her high chambers, she reviewed his daily interactions with the princess. She had summoned him, not only for his knowledge, but also as a test. For decades, she had worried about the loneliness of leadership her daughter might inherit. Liara was intelligent, capable, and compassionate. But she was still young and had spent most of her life within the palace walls. Perhaps, the Empress thought, a human could offer her daughter qualities that no Aelari courtier could provide: honesty, courage, and a fresh perspective. The subtle tensions in the court became apparent over the following days. Other nobles, noticing Ethan's increasing proximity to Liara, began whispering among themselves. Their words carried both suspicion and thinly veiled warnings. Ethan remained polite and professional, yet he could sense the undercurrent of envy and intrigue. Some nobles tried to guide Liara's attention elsewhere, presenting her with suitors from prestigious Aelari families. She politely refused, often citing her interest in learning more about human culture. But Ethan could see the faint sparkle of mischief in her eyes whenever she dismissed these suitors. One evening, Ethan was invited to a private chamber in the palace to discuss a matter of cultural importance with the Empress. The room was quiet, illuminated by floating spheres of soft light that hovered in the corners. The Empress studied him carefully. "Your presence here has had unexpected effects," she said. "I have observed how my daughter responds to you. Tell me, Ethan, do you understand the weight of this attention?" Ethan bowed slightly. "I am aware, Your Majesty. I do not wish to disrupt your court or offend any traditions. My goal is to share knowledge and foster understanding. Any personal connection with Princess Liara is unintended and respectful." The Empress's silver eyes held him for a long moment. "Do you not feel anything toward her?" she asked, her voice calm but probing. Ethan hesitated. He could not lie, and he could not reveal too much. "I respect her greatly," he said finally. "She is remarkable, and I am honored to know her." A faint smile touched the Empress's lips. "Humans are honest in ways we often are not," she said. "Perhaps that is why she is drawn to you. But this court is not kind to deviation. Love, affection, even admiration, must navigate layers of expectation. Are you prepared to face that? Ethan nodded, silently aware of the challenge. He understood that winning Liara's trust, and perhaps her affection, would require patience, courage, and wisdom. It would not be enough to impress her with knowledge or wit. He would need to act with integrity and show the values he had always held as a human. The next days brought both opportunities and challenges. The Empress requested Ethan's input on a diplomatic matter involving trade agreements with neighboring worlds. He studied the documents and noticed subtle imbalances that could lead to conflict. Presenting his ideas required tact, as he had to speak in a way that respected Alari protocol while remaining truthful. When he finished, the council members exchanged glances. Some frowned at his audacity, while others were quietly impressed. The Empress inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his insight without a word. Liara observed Ethan during these discussions, her admiration growing. She noticed how he remained calm under pressure, how he navigated the court's complexities with both honesty and cleverness. One afternoon, she found him alone in the gardens, sketching the palace architecture in a small notebook. "You pay attention to details most people ignore," she said softly. Ethan looked up, slightly embarrassed. "I notice things," he replied. "Sometimes the smallest details tell the biggest stories." Liara smiled, walking closer. "Perhaps that is why you understand people so well," she said, "even those who try to hide their intentions or feelings." Ethan felt a flutter of something unfamiliar, a warmth that spread through him whenever she spoke. "Perhaps," he said, careful to keep his tone neutral. "Or perhaps humans are simply curious by nature." As the weeks passed, Ethan and Liara's connection deepened. They shared quiet meals, discussed philosophies, and explored the gardens and galleries together. Ethan began to sense that Liara's feelings for him were growing stronger, though she never voiced them directly. Small gestures, a hand brushing against his accidentally, a shared laugh, a lingering look hinted at something more. But the palace was a place of rules and expectations, and both of them understood the dangers of acting too openly. One evening, as they sat on a balcony overlooking the city, Liara spoke softly. "Ethan, I sometimes worry about what others think. My mother, the court, my own people. They expect things from me. And yet—" She hesitated, looking down at the glowing streets below. Ethan waited, giving her space. Finally, she whispered, "And yet, I feel that what matters most is not what is expected, but what is true." Ethan reached out, resting a hand lightly near hers, not touching, only a gesture of presence. "I understand," he said. "Truth is something worth protecting. Sometimes it is easier to follow expectations, but the courage to honor what is real, that defines a person." Liara's eyes met his, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. They understood each other in a way that transcended species, protocol, and expectation. It was a fragile connection, delicate yet undeniable. Yet the palace was never quiet for long. The whispers of other nobles grew louder. Some began plotting, subtly challenging Ethan's presence and influence. They tested Liara with questions and distractions, hoping to redirect her attention to more suitable companions. But she remained steadfast, often surprising her advisors with both intelligence and clarity. Ethan noticed her courage, admiring how she navigated the court's pressures without losing her sense of self. The Empress continued to watch. Each time she observed Ethan and Liara together, she felt a mixture of caution and curiosity. Humans were unpredictable, and yet their sincerity was undeniable. She realized that perhaps her daughter's heart had already recognized a truth her mind had yet to accept. Ethan, with his human values and unwavering honesty, embodied qualities the Empress had long admired but never seen in the court. One afternoon, a challenge arose. A visiting noble from a distant system attempted to insult Ethan subtly during a discussion on interstellar trade. The noble's tone was polite, but the words carried clear disdain. Ethan remained composed, responding with logic, respect, and clever reasoning. He turned the situation into an opportunity to teach both Aolari and human delegates the value of fairness and understanding. Liara watched, her eyes bright with pride. The Empress, observing quietly, allowed a small, approving nod. As the sun set over the glowing city, Ethan reflected on his time in the palace. He had entered as a visitor, a human scholar summoned for observation. But he had become something more. A friend, a confidant, and perhaps, in ways unspoken, someone Liara could trust above all others. The connection between them was subtle, growing, and alive, yet carefully guarded. And somewhere in the Empress's chambers, the ruler of the Aolari Empire contemplated the unexpected arrival of a human in her palace. She understood that the bond forming between her daughter and Ethan could challenge traditions, shift perceptions, and perhaps even shape the future of her empire. Yet, she also realized that it was a bond rooted in honesty, courage, and respect, the very qualities she had always valued. For Ethan, the days ahead promised new challenges, both political and personal. But one truth had become clear. He was no longer merely an observer. He was part of a story larger than himself, one that involved courage, trust, and the beginnings of a connection that could bridge worlds. And for the first time in his life, he felt that being human, honest, brave, curious, was not only enough, but perhaps exactly what the universe had been waiting for. The palace had never felt more alive than it did during the weeks that followed. Ethan had become accustomed to the routines of the court, the quiet strategies of the nobles, and the subtle glances of Princess Liara that seemed to carry messages he was only beginning to understand. But the sense of calm was fragile, as the Empress had warned. The universe beyond the palace walls was restless, and whispers of a rival empire's ambitions had begun reaching the council chambers. One morning, a messenger arrived from the neighboring empire of Virelia, bringing news that the Aolari trade fleets had been sabotaged near the edge of contested space. Supplies were delayed, alliances were strained, and some human and alien diplomats had been injured during skirmishes on neutral stations. The council called an emergency meeting, summoning Ethan for his insight. Humans had a reputation for innovative thinking, and in times of crisis, the Empress valued his perspective. Ethan studied the reports carefully. Virelia was using subtle tactics, rather than outright war, hoping to destabilize the Aolari from within. He noticed patterns in the attacks, suggesting that someone inside the empire might be helping the rivals. He shared his analysis with the council, explaining how small manipulations could create chaos without direct confrontation. Many council members were skeptical, but Ethan's reasoning was clear and logical. The Empress listened quietly, her silver eyes fixed on him, a mixture of curiosity and cautious approval in her gaze. Liara, too, was present. She had insisted on observing the discussion, even though some courtiers considered it unusual for her to participate in sensitive matters. She watched Ethan carefully, noting how he remained calm under pressure, how he anticipated questions and challenges with patience and clarity. When he suggested a plan to secure the trade routes, combine intelligence from multiple factions, and strengthen internal communications, she felt a surge of admiration. His human perspective brought ideas that no Aolari strategist had considered. After the council meeting, Ethan was invited to the private gardens with Liara. The glowing flora created pools of soft light around them, and the twin moons reflected in the streams that ran through the palace grounds. "You handled the council with courage," Liara said softly, her silver eyes warm. "Many of them would have dismissed your suggestions immediately, but you remained steady." Ethan shrugged, trying to appear modest. "I only spoke what I saw. Sometimes, looking at a problem from the outside reveals things that insiders cannot see." Liara smiled, and Ethan noticed how her eyes lingered on his face longer than usual. "That is why I respect humans," she said. "You do not fear the unknown, and you speak honestly. Those are rare qualities here." Ethan felt a warmth rise in his chest. He wanted to tell her that he respected her as much, but he restrained himself, understanding the importance of patience and timing. Instead, he simply nodded. "Thank you, Liara. That means a lot coming from you." The following days were filled with preparation. Ethan worked alongside the Alari Council to implement his strategies. He trained small teams, coordinated communications, and even helped develop contingency plans. His human ingenuity was proving invaluable, yet it also drew attention. Some nobles began to whisper more openly about his influence, their envy mixing with doubt. A few subtle attempts were made to discredit him, portraying his suggestions as risky or impulsive. Ethan met each challenge with calm logic, carefully demonstrating the merit of his plans. Liara stood by him through it all, offering support in subtle ways. She would provide crucial information about court politics, introduce him to influential advisors, or simply be present during tense discussions. Her presence was both reassuring and grounding. Ethan realized that he had come to rely on her insights as much as his own instincts. Together, they formed a quiet partnership that combined human adaptability with Aolari knowledge. One evening, as they reviewed intelligence reports, Ethan noticed a pattern of inconsistencies in certain council members' reports. "Someone is hiding information," he said quietly, pointing to discrepancies in trade logs and communication transcripts. Liara leaned over his shoulder, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Do you think it is someone from the inner circle?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Most likely. They are trying to manipulate events to weaken the Empire and make the Empress vulnerable." Liara's eyes narrowed. "We must be careful," she said. "If the wrong person discovers that you know, it could be dangerous." Ethan agreed. The palace was a place of hidden agendas, and even small mistakes could have far-reaching consequences. They decided to investigate discreetly, using subtle methods to uncover the traitor, while maintaining the appearance of normal court activities. During the investigation, Ethan and Liara spent long hours together, discussing possibilities, analyzing patterns, and observing the behaviors of nobles and advisors. Their bond grew stronger, built not only on mutual respect but also on shared purpose. Ethan realized that his admiration for Liara had deepened into something more profound. He cared for her safety, her happiness, and her freedom in a way that transcended cultural boundaries. Liara, in turn, found herself increasingly drawn to Ethan's honesty and courage. She had spent most of her life under careful watch, learning protocol and restraint, yet Ethan inspired her to trust her instincts. She admired how he valued truth over appearances, courage over convenience, and loyalty over ambition. In his presence, she felt a freedom she had never experienced. A connection that defied protocol yet felt undeniably right. Tension escalated when a rival noble, sensing Ethan's influence, attempted to frame him for a mismanaged supply shipment. The accusation was subtle, designed to appear as a simple error rather than sabotage. Ethan remained composed, presenting evidence, questioning witnesses, and demonstrating the truth with clarity. Liara supported him by offering her observations and insights, showing that she trusted him completely. Their combined efforts not only exposed the scheme but also strengthened Ethan's position in the court. The Empress observed these events with growing interest. She noted how Ethan handled danger with calm intelligence, how he navigated the intricate web of court politics, and how Liara responded to him. She began to see that the human qualities she had once doubted, courage, loyalty, moral clarity, were precisely what her daughter needed. Yet she remained cautious, understanding that love and affection in the court could bring both strength and peril. As the threat from Virelia intensified, the Empress entrusted Ethan with greater responsibility. He coordinated with the palace guards, strategized defensive measures, and negotiated with neutral factions to secure support. Each step required ingenuity, diplomacy, and courage. Ethan rose to the challenge, demonstrating that humans could not only survive in alien courts, but also thrive and lead when circumstances demanded it. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of planning and preparation, Ethan and Liara found themselves alone in the palace gardens. The air was filled with the scent of glowing flowers, and the city below shimmered with soft light. Liara turned to him, her expression serious yet gentle. "Ethan, Do you realize what you have done here? You have not only helped protect the Empire, but you have shown what humans are capable of. Courage, intelligence, honesty. You embody qualities that even we struggle to maintain at times. Quote, Ethan felt a deep sense of pride and humility. I only did what I thought was right, he replied, but I could not have done it without your guidance. You understand your people in ways I never could, and you have taught me more than I could ever learn from books. Liara smiled softly, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. I trust you, Ethan, she said quietly, and that trust is not given lightly. Ethan looked at her, realizing that her words were more than mere friendship. There was a depth of feeling there, careful but undeniable. He wanted to speak, to tell her how he felt, but he hesitated, aware of the delicate balance between respect, duty, and emotion. The tension in the court reached its peak when the investigation uncovered the full extent of the conspiracy. A faction of nobles had been secretly aiding Virelia, hoping to weaken the Empress and gain power for themselves. The Empress acted swiftly, using Ethan's analysis and Liara's insight to confront the conspirators. The traitors were exposed, their plans dismantled, and their influence curtailed. The court, once filled with whispers and doubt, now recognized Ethan's contributions and the clarity he brought to a perilous situation. In the aftermath, the Empress called Ethan to her chambers. She regarded him with her characteristic calm intensity. You have proven yourself human, she said, not only in intellect but in character. Your courage and honesty have saved lives and strengthened this empire. My daughter has learned much from you, and I have learned to respect your people more than I anticipated. Ethan bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only sought to do what was right. The Empress's expression softened. There is one thing you must understand, she said. Liara's heart has noticed you. That is not something I can ignore. But you must also understand the weight of tradition and expectation. The path ahead is not simple. Ethan nodded. I understand, and I am willing to face whatever challenges come, with honesty and respect. Later, Ethan and Liara stood together in the gardens once more, watching the twin moons rise. The events of the past weeks had drawn them closer. Their trust deepened, and their bond strengthened by shared challenges. Ethan felt a profound sense of purpose, knowing that he was not just a visitor in this alien world, but a participant in a story larger than himself. Liara's presence was a constant reminder that courage, honesty, and connection could bridge worlds, cultures, and expectations. As they walked side by side under the glowing foliage, Ethan realized that the real test was only beginning. The political landscape was still dangerous, the court still wary, and their bond still fragile. Yet, for the first time, he felt a certainty that humans, with all their flaws and strengths, could make a difference in even the most alien of worlds. And perhaps, in the process, they could teach even the most powerful empires the value of trust, courage, and the heart. The palace was alive with quiet anticipation. As the Empress prepared to address the court, word had spread quickly of Ethan's contributions to defending the empire against the conspirators and external threats. The nobles, once skeptical and envious, now observed him with a mix of respect and curiosity. Even so, the atmosphere remained tense. Many still questioned whether a human could truly belong within the delicate hierarchy of Alari politics. Ethan felt the weight of it all as he walked through the grand corridors. The events of the past weeks had changed him. He was no longer just an observer or a visitor. He had been trusted with critical decisions, had faced danger, and had earned the cautious admiration of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And through it all, Liara had been by his side, her presence both comforting and inspiring. They met briefly in the palace gardens before the formal gathering. Liara's silver eyes held a mixture of pride and anxiety. Today is not just about politics, she said softly. It is about the future of this empire, and perhaps about us as well. Ethan reached out and took her hand gently. "We will face it together," he said. "Whatever happens, we will be honest, courageous, and respectful. That is all anyone can ask for." Liara smiled, squeezing his hand before releasing it. The court assembled in the central hall, a massive chamber illuminated by floating lights that shimmered like stars. Nobles from across the empire took their seats, and the Empress entered, her presence commanding immediate silence. She moved to her throne, and all eyes turned to her as she began to speak. "My children of the Empire," she said, her voice steady and clear. "These past weeks have tested our strength, our loyalty, and our wisdom. We faced threats both within and beyond our borders. And we have survived through courage, unity, and understanding. We have learned that strength is not only in power, but also in integrity, intelligence, and trust." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. Finally, her eyes rested on Ethan. "A human has walked among us, sharing knowledge, insight, and courage. He has proven that even those outside our traditions can act with honor, bravery, and clarity of purpose. His contributions have strengthened this empire beyond expectation." A murmur ran through the hall, and Ethan felt both pride and nervousness. This was more than recognition, it was a statement. He bowed respectfully, acknowledging the Empress's words without arrogance. Beside him, Liara watched with a glowing expression, her heart swelling with admiration and relief. The Empress continued, her gaze turning toward her daughter. "And there is another matter that must be addressed. Princess Liara, you have shown wisdom beyond your years in these trials. Your courage and insight have guided us through difficult times. Yet it is clear that your heart has also recognized truth and value in another being. That recognition is not a weakness, but a strength. And it must be acknowledged." The court fell silent. All eyes turned to Liara, and then to Ethan. Ethan's heart pounded. He had suspected that Liara's feelings were growing, but he had not expected such public acknowledgement. He remained composed, drawing on all the calm and respect he had cultivated over the past weeks. Liara stepped forward, her posture confident yet humble. "Mother, I have trusted my instincts, my judgment, and my heart," she said, "and my heart recognizes that Ethan is honorable, brave, and true. He has proven himself in ways I could not have imagined. I do not choose lightly, but I choose him with respect and trust." A hush fell over the hall. The nobles exchanged glances, some uncertain, some approving, and a few still skeptical. The Empress regarded her daughter silently for a long moment. Then, she spoke, her tone softer but no less commanding. "I have observed both of you. I have watched your actions, your courage, and your respect for this empire. Ethan, you are not just a human visitor. You are a being of integrity and intelligence. And Liara, you have shown discernment and strength in following your heart. Therefore, I publicly bless this bond. It is my hope that it will strengthen both the empire and your lives." The hall erupted in a mixture of applause, respectful bows, and whispers of admiration. Some nobles hesitated but eventually followed suit, acknowledging the Empress's decision. Ethan felt a surge of relief and gratitude. He bowed deeply to the Empress, then turned to Liara, whose eyes reflected both happiness and the relief of having her feelings recognized. After the ceremony, the Empress held a private audience with Ethan and Liara. "Understand," she said, "that this blessing is not simply about affection. It represents trust, mutual respect, and courage. It will not make the path easy. There will be challenges, both from tradition and from those who cannot yet accept change, but it is a beginning of something that could unite worlds." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I understand, Your Majesty. I will honor this trust and work to uphold it in every way possible." The Empress studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head slightly, a gesture of approval. "See that you do. And remember, the strength of the human spirit is remarkable. protect it, and it will guide you both. In the following days, preparations began for a celebration to honor the recent victories and the bond between Liara and Ethan. The palace buzzed with energy. Delegates from neighboring systems arrived, curious to witness this historic moment. The gardens were decorated with luminescent flowers, glowing banners, and streams of soft light. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the aroma of exotic foods from across the galaxy. During the celebration, Ethan moved carefully among the nobles, speaking with humility and respect. He answered questions about his human culture, shared insights into human ingenuity, and expressed gratitude for the Empress's trust. Many nobles who had doubted him were won over by his intelligence, honesty, and charm. Liara accompanied him, radiant and confident, speaking proudly of the human who had become both her friend and her partner. Later that evening, as the festivities continued, Ethan and Liara found a quiet spot in the palace gardens. The glow of the luminescent plants reflected in the streams, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Liara took his hand in hers, her fingers warm and reassuring. "Ethan," she said softly, "I never imagined that love could be so complicated, yet so simple. You have taught me that courage and honesty are stronger than fear or expectation." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And you have shown me that trust, empathy, and patience can bridge worlds. Together, we can face anything." Liara smiled, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she felt completely understood, completely safe, and completely free. The Empress observed them from a distance, a subtle smile on her lips. She had feared that human affection might be a fleeting distraction, yet she now realized that Ethan's presence had strengthened her daughter's courage, her insight, and her understanding of the wider universe. The union between human and Aelari represented not only a personal connection but also the potential for cultural exchange, mutual respect, and unity across species. In the weeks that followed, Ethan continued his work within the palace. He advised on trade, strategy, and diplomacy, always with humility and careful attention. Liara remained at his side, both a partner and a guide. Together, they worked to implement reforms, strengthen alliances, and promote understanding between humans and Aelari alike. The court slowly adapted to the new reality. The story of Ethan's courage and Liara's wisdom spread across the empire. Nobles who had once doubted or opposed them began to see the value of bridging worlds. The Empress, once cautious and wary, now observed with quiet pride as her daughter and the human scholar navigated both courtly intrigue and personal connection with grace and integrity. One evening, Ethan and Liara stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons cast silver light across the glowing towers and gardens. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here from the crowded streets of Terra Prime to the heart of the Aelari Empire. He had faced danger, political intrigue, and cultural challenges. Yet he had grown stronger, wiser, and more certain of his own values. Liara leaned against him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. "From strangers in different worlds to this?" Ethan smiled, gazing at the glowing city below. "I do. And I realized that it was not just courage or knowledge that brought us here. It was trust, honesty, and the willingness to understand each other. That is what made all the difference." Liara nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. "And I believe this is only the beginning. Together, we can face any challenge, unite worlds, and create a future built on respect and courage." Ethan felt a surge of hope and determination. He had always believed in the potential of humanity, in its capacity for bravery, compassion, and ingenuity. Now, standing beside Liara, he realized that humans could inspire change even in the most alien and complex of societies. And together, they could shape a future where understanding, trust, and the human spirit could flourish across the galaxy. The palace shimmered with life, but Ethan and Liara felt a calm certainty. Their bond had survived trials of politics, intrigue, and danger. It had grown stronger through shared challenges and mutual respect. And as they looked toward the stars, they knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Two beings from different worlds, united by courage, trust, and the enduring strength of the human heart. And in that moment, it was clear that humans, with their imperfections and their brilliance, had not only survived among the stars, they had changed the universe. One choice, one act of courage, and one bond of trust at a time.